Hello, everyone. This is Julie from August Birdsong, and I am here today with my latest journal for the Graphic Fairies design team, and I'm calling it The Gift Giver and Other Christmas Lore. And this is a journal that has been a long time in the making. Years ago, I wrote an essay on the origins of Santa Claus, and I learned that the American version of Santa is really a compilation of all different cultures' visions of this gift giver. And the story of Santa Claus starts with a real man named Nicholas, who was a young orphan in Turkey in about 280 AD. So, this is going to be a history of the development and evolution of the Santa figure throughout the world and time. And I hope you'll enjoy it. On the cover here, you'll notice I didn't go with the traditional kind of Christmas colors. And the reason is I wanted it to have kind of a universal theme. And so I've put Santa or St. Nicholas out in space in the universe. And actually, old Russian legends called their St. Nicholas a wonder worker who actually drove his sled of flying reindeer throughout the universe, helping sick people and doing wondrous works. And so, knowing that, I thought this is where I want the cover to go. And so, here you have it again in the beautiful darkness and starry sky of space. And this is again just an upcycled Better Homes and Gardens. This is the Craftsman binder. And I used a little bit of just tissue paper on the spine because that's usually the hardest one to get a decent, getting it to lay nice and flat. And this, you're going to see this lace trim throughout the video pages. And it's from an old sheet that got a bad rip in it, but it had all this beautiful trim on it. And so I'm using the main part of the sheet just as like muslin that I'm tearing up. But I use this trim throughout, and it's just torn off of the sheet and repurposed. So, opening up, we're beginning with the story of Nicholas. On this page, I just did a more traditional, somewhat modern American Santa. He has the red, but he still has a little bit of a European Santa look. He's not quite as chubby and jolly as typical American Santas. And so I've started him traveling through the countryside with his bag of gifts and even leaving some little treats out and about for the animals and birds out there in nature and all. And now we're going back to 280 AD, and we're going to what would be modern day Turkey. And here I wanted to make this kind of regal or very cathedral like. And what I used for this are bookmarks from the stained glass window kit. And so here they're actually labeled as bookmarks. I made them into doors, and here's the reason why. Nicholas was an orphaned boy whose parents died of the plague, and he actually was quite wealthy. His parents were wealthy, and he was a generous person, and he gave more than he received. And as he became a young man, he went into a life in the Christian church, and he was the youngest bishop ever. He was known as the boy bishop, and he became a bishop at 19. And the most famous story that goes along with St. Nicholas, or one of the most famous, is that he helped three sisters. That word came to him, and I'm going to go ahead and open this. Word came to him that one of the sisters was going to sell herself into slavery so that the money could go to her other two sisters' dowries. And remember, for centuries, girls were valued in marriage as a business transaction, and the dowries that their families brought to a marriage went to the groom's side. And so it wasn't about love, it was about money. And so Nicholas heard that, we'll say the older sister here, was going to make this sacrifice, and he felt very bad for her and her two young sisters. And so he ended up going by their house at night, and through the window he dropped gold coins into their stockings that were hung to dry. And that's where we kind of get the origins of hanging your stocking at, on Christmas Eve, or I'll tell you another time in just a minute, to hang your stocking, was because he did this several nights in a row, dropping those coins until the girls had enough money that the sister would not need to sell herself into slavery. So just a quick note, yes, she has angel wings, and so do these sweet little girls. And it's nice to think children as little angels and sweethearts. They have their moments, but they are sweet and very pure. And so I just had to use those beautiful girls in it. I found my bishops here, the figures, on the free blog. And so just going through different holiday digitals in the archives on the free blog, I came across them and just sized them to fit the page as I wanted it. And here we have an angel up here. And for my doors, again, I like to use time in my journals. And so I just put half of a clock on either side of the door to represent time. And so there you have it. This is just a pocket, and on this tab here, or this edge, this is old bookbinding. So when I take apart a book, I save that really rough outer edge of it. So think of this part when you take a book apart. And if possible, I save it because it's got great texture. So moving right along then, and we'll put our sisters back. That's where the stocking story came from. And so here we have something about December 6th, actually the 5th and the 6th. And that has to do with the fact that Nicholas died in 343 AD. And it was at that point after his death that he was made a saint. And in centuries following, a celebration of Nicholas, Saint Nicholas, and his gift giving evolved on December 6th, which was the actual day he died. And the night of December 5th was St. Nicholas Eve. And so that's the night children around the world would hang their stockings or put their shoes. In some cultures, they put their shoes out on the doorstep, hoping for something special in the morning from a visit from St. Nicholas. And so here again, I've just made this page reminding us of the three sisters and their stockings. And here's just a little photo again of three sisters hanging their stockings, and more of that book spine binding on that. And so, when I was growing up, my friends all hung their stockings on Christmas Eve, December 24th. But my family was of German origins, and my parents had always been raised that you hung your stocking on December 5th. And so that's when I would receive my stocking full of usually nuts, always an orange in the very bottom, nuts, and maybe some little chocolates or other candy treats. And then we'd get the Christmas gifts actually on Christmas Day. So moving right along, here we're coming to another page, just winter fun. And on this one, you can see my backgrounds, like I usually do, are just a collage of paper scraps from, older journals I did where I had leftovers. And I wanted this journal to have a real scrapbook kind of patchwork feeling to it. And so I brought in just a lot of, reds and orange and golds and greens, and also a lot of different tones of white and light brown. And so here we have an image of Santa. He's looking a little bossy there. And here we have a mischief maker. Watch for more of those little mice in the future. And here is just an image of, this is French, and children sledding and the joy of Christmas time. And here I just put, here comes Santa Claus. And here is an old image of Santa. May Santa Claus be good to you. And what's interesting about this and the origins of Santa Claus is we kind of think of Santa, especially in America, as this, just jolly, happy man, character. But in the origins of that story, there are versions where Santa's helper was not so nice. Santa was bringing gifts for the children who knew their Bible lessons, who had been good, kind individuals, but he had a partner, in some cases known as Rue Claus, which means rough Nicholas, and in other versions called Krampus, and also I think Bellschnickel, which is German, and there are even more versions of this name. So many of the Santas or St. Nicholases from around the world were seen more as a stern figure who expected good behavior and rewarded it and punished bad behavior. And so we end up having a different type of Santa or St. Nicholas here, where here is his partner. I found this on the public domain. In this copy, this is an actual postcard from 1901, and this is Krampus, and you can see the date 1901 right up there, and you can see he's sort of a demon, and he has sticks and chains for naughty children. Here's another one. A Krampus carton, meaning like a Christmas card, but this is a card from Krampus, who most children, as you can see in his face, would not want to meet Krampus. And he would actually, in the old tales, take naughty children away. And look at his chains. He had his basket or his Christmas bag with him. This little girl was given fruit by St. Nicholas because she had been a good little girl, but this little boy had been naughty. And up here on the postcard it says Gruß vom Krampus, which means like greetings from Krampus. Probably not a Christmas card most children would want. Now you might think, what were they thinking? How could they treat children this way? Well, for centuries, children were thought of more as little adults. And one way to discipline children was to scare them. And so this was an example of something that could be held over children's heads, especially the closer it got to the Christmas season, that their behavior, were they doing their chores, all of those kinds of things, not being naughty, keep them in line. And even all the way up into the 1920s, when my parents were born in 1927, my mother would tell me stories of, a common saying that her mother and relatives would say that the goblins will get you if you don't watch out. And so fear was quite a tactic in discipline. Here we have some reminders here around the jollier side of St. Nicholas. It was thought if Christmas occurred on a Sunday, that was like a good omen, that you would have a mild or at least livable winter, and your crops in the spring, would be good, and you'd have a green Easter. Now, if Christmas fell on a Saturday, it was just the opposite, and that was like a bad omen. Some other things around Advent, in the days leading up to the Christmas celebration, um, we have the songs and associations around Christmas with the plum pudding. And pudding, especially hundreds of years ago, was not like what we think of, especially American pudding, which is like a dessert, almost like a sorbet of sorts. Pudding was almost more of a concoction with suet, which is fat, and berries, nuts, meat, if you had it, like minced meat, torn up bits of beef or whatever you had, mixed in with wine if you could get it, and all different spices. And this would be mixed together at the beginning of Advent. And I believe maybe it wasn't actually what we would say baked until right before Christmas. But either way, you wanted it to sit for like 40 days or so the flavors soaked in. And years ago, they didn't have, like baking powder, things for making cakes rise easily. So a pudding was in a cloth sack and boiled. And so when we think of a Christmas pudding, that's what it was. But it was a rich treat for the holiday. And that's kind of the origin of the plum pudding. Now, here I have Santa going through the forest again, or St. Nicholas delivering his gifts. And I've lit my little fir tree here with just some little gold stickles for candlelight. And the first Christmas tree is thought to have originated in the 1500s, especially with Martin Luther, who in about 1536 was coming through the forest at night and fell in love with the night sky and the stars and the beauty of the heavens. And so he ended up putting a fir tree, which represents eternal life, inside his house and hung candles on it. Now, that's a whole nother danger as far as fires go, but that's thought that was really where the idea of the Christmas tree inside the house came from. And so now we're going to move into more of the Middle Ages here. So now we're entering medieval times around the 1500s here, and this is also the time of King Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, all his wives and all. And holiday celebrations were a time in the year when work could be put aside, especially for the 12 days of Christmas, which went from December 25th to January 5th. And it was just a time for all people to celebrate, hopefully celebrating a good harvest, that the cupboards were stocked for the winter. And it was also a time of celebrating with games and musics and costumes and parties and songs. And one of the old songs is Partridge in a Pear Tree. And in my studies, I found that, this idea of a partridge in a pear tree, where did that come from? Well, it was one of the lines in the song that was really meant to be a memory game, almost like think of a tongue twister or, some kind of a listing game where you're trying to keep everything in order. And it's believed that the partridge in the pear tree came from the French word perdrix, Perdrix. Perdrix is the name for a partridge in France. And I guess they do go in trees there, but English partridges tend to be ground dwelling. And so in the translation with the French word, perdrix sounded a lot like pear tree. And so that's the association with the partridge being in the pear tree. Here again, I've used those stained glass bookmarks, and I've put my lovely lady here dancing. Her dress represents such beautiful colors of holiday season, and this is just a jelly print that I had. The colors worked well with this. And moving on to this page, first I'm going to tell you here about this top flip, which is Saturnalia. Now, there was a mix of the Roman celebration of the new year and, the winter solstice with Saturnalia. And it was, again, that idea of the year shifting into the cold time of death with, the plants, the vegetation, everything dying again. Think of it almost like Persephone going down into the underworld and it being just this dark, lonely time. And so throughout history with the Romans, they celebrated this time of year. And so some of those traditions were brought in even with the Christian celebrations. And so here we have, again, like I said, the court of maybe Henry VIII or some other medieval king. And it's this festive time with the 12 days of Christmas. Ghost stories were told. And you might think, ghost stories? Well, this isn't Halloween. What's that about? Well, it was a time of atonement where leading up to Christmas Day, remember with Advent and that time coming up to it, a time to reflect on your life and what you had done with your life and your hopes for the future. And would you have a good future? And what did you want out of it? Now, this was also around the time of the Protestant Reformation. And at that point, you have the idea of saints going out of style. And so St. Nicholas became character names like Kris Kringle, Father Time, Father Christmas, and some other names I'll bring up in here as well. And so that's why we have names like Kris Kringle and Father Christmas, is because it wasn't okay to refer to him as a saint anymore. It was a political issue. So again, the ghost stories were like stories of remembrance. And even think of Charles Dickens, A Christmas Carol, and the ghosts of Christmas past and present, and then the future, and that time of really reflection and thinking ahead for where your life was going to go. But during that time also was the celebration. And so, like I said, the dancing, the Yule log was a massive log brought in to last, burning in the hearth through the 12 days of Christmas. Here we have the fool, the castle fool, to bring lightheartedness to dark days. And the thing to remember with this time is also how incredibly dark and lonely and cold winter must have been in throughout Europe and parts of the world that did get, especially cold. No electricity. Imagine just how pitch black the darkness, the sun setting earlier, how dark it seemed. Um, we also have around this time Shakespeare's A Winter's Tale. Again, a story of restoration and renewal, forgiveness, those types of themes. And that's on a jelly print as well. And so the winter solstice, I really like this Santa. In this one here, he's on another jelly print, and I've just used the trees and the pine cones as he makes his way through the cold winter land. And then here in the security of the castle walls, here we have, I used this knight. I had him left over from an earlier journal. And I just thought to represent that time of like I was saying, Henry VIII and castles and the security of telling a ghost tale by the hearth of the castle, knowing you're safe and part of your community there. And that was very rejuvenating for people, that sense of place and belonging and security going into a new year. And so turning the page here then, we're going into a different section. And this is a little bit more about Scandinavian versions of St. Nicholas. And St. Nicholas was seen much more as an elf-like character. And so you can see maybe where an American Santa drew on, the chubby elf-like persona. And here I just have this beautiful image of the boys sledding on a cold winter day, and this cute little card of the little girls waiting for Santa. And, knowing he would be coming down the chimney, and here are their little stockings. But there was also some fear that trolls, kind of mischievous, troublemaking individuals who pretty much lived underground all year, and they would come out during that 12 days of Christmas, that they might come and they might cause trouble. Maybe they would steal from you. And the chimney was seen sort of like on Halloween in my video when I talked about it being sort of a portal between All Hallows Eve and All Saints Day, that it was a portal time when ghosts and other characters, spirits, could mingle in the living world. And so the chimney was a portal or entryway for something like trolls and all. And so that could be a little bit unnerving for children or families believing that. Julnis is the Scandinavian name for St. Nicholas. And so here I have a jelly print in the background. These are actually shapes of trees in the background. And here I just cut down this like postcard tag, and so that it's more like a little scene there. And up here you have some mischief makers and watching the clock for the celebration, and then going into the new year. And here are some little girls maybe putting names on packages, or maybe writing letters to Santa. And here, notice this is from the stained glass bundle. And what I like to do with those, just because they're beautiful, but they also are a way to embellish and bring out certain colors. And so these are just from the domino collage printable. And so sometimes these ones that are kind of divided, I'll just cut them into small little squares, um, and just use them for accenting colors and all. So those are something to consider using just as a pretty embellishment. And here we have Santa's little helpers sweeping away the snow and cleaning up the greenery. And Santa is overseeing it all. Here they're hanging icicles. And this Santa again reminds me, well, he has the body of an American Santa, but the demeanor of kind of a sterner European Santa Claus. And again, maybe these guys get into mischief if Santa doesn't keep them in line. And so there you have that. And then moving into the 1800s, here's just reminiscing about, again, A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. And I've added this lady. They are all from the Dickens Christmas bundle. I pulled them from that and just sized them to what I wanted. And here I've just tucked some images. This is an old advertisement for chocolates. And let's see here. We have, this is a digital of an old cover for a Christmas Carol. I really like that use of the red. And this little girl, she just reminds me of a beautiful little bird there. And I just wanted to use her in some way to get her in my journal. And so she's maybe waiting for Santa. This is some actual, if you can see it kind of, it's real delicate. It's tea bag that from tea I had, and I just emptied out the tea, letting it dry, and then use that. It's almost like a tissue paper on there. And I have some more right here for texture. Here's another cover for A Christmas Carol. And then this cute little dog. And then here's just a pretty old postcard of a girl reading, which I thought was appropriate with A Christmas Carol. And a postcard on the back, and I just stamped the geese on it to express that passage of time. And this is just an old doily ripped apart and, just in its fringed bits, it's beautiful in its own way. So don't forget to look in your linen closet for bits and scraps of things that may not seem like you're going to use them anymore, but look at them in a way like, if I tore it apart, would I use it? And that may seem strange, but give it new life in that way. And so we're coming to the end here. Here we have Waiting for Santa Claus, and there's another kind of elf troll-like character driving a car there. And in 1822, Clement Clark Moore wrote "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." And in that, it's also known as A Visit from St. Nicholas. And he really combined many different visions of St. Nicholas. And so here I have a real pretty little tag here. It's from a Christmas card, Christmas 1904, of the boy and maybe his dog there. And here you see the stockings hanging there. And I wrote 1911 here because in looking into the origins of St. Nicholas, I came across some Christmas lore about a modern excavation going on in a house where the chimney and all of that was getting taken apart, an old house. I think this was maybe in England. And in the chimney, an old letter to Santa was found, and it was from a little girl named Hannah. And she and her brother had written to Santa asking she wanted a doll. And so in my picture here, I have Santa giving the little girl a doll, as well as a waterproof hood and cape. And she also would like some gold coins, and I think there was some candy in there too. Now you're thinking, why was this letter up the chimney? Well, it was a tradition, and I want to go back real quick and grab this, a tradition for children to write a letter to Santa and allow it to go up the flue of the chimney. And because again, the chimney was that portal. And so it would go, in their minds, it was getting taken to Santa. And in this chimney, it just got wedged in between, I guess, some bricks and survived. And so when it was found, it was 80 some years after little Hannah had written that letter to Santa. And then I've wanted to use this one for a long time. She's such a cute little girl. Here she's typing out her letter to Santa. And this was just serendipity on the paper I put it on. It says, I wonder, am I just hypersensitive? I mean, it's past. And it just made me think, was she complaining about some things she wasn't satisfied with? She has that look on her of maybe being a bit of a busybody. And here we have the green darkness. So some fun there. And finally, coming to our traditional kind of, again, American Santa Claus. Really, this one on this page is truly a version of an American Santa. And we have children sleeping, tucked in their beds, and this beautiful card. And I just really loved this photo of this mother and child. And I've put that trim from the sheet all around this Santa because he's smoking, and so it worked with the smoke. And then up and away Santa Claus goes, and we have a flip. Here's again much more of a European Santa and a cute little critter with a cane there. And I have here this image, I called it the North Pole that he's heading to. And here's just an old postcard of Santa using a telephone to get, those details about who wants what for Christmas. And this is an image of 1920 magazine of Santa Claus. And I just put a child putting in, again, a Christmas card or wish list to Santa. And here we have Santa airmail, a French postcard, and some of those troublemakers looking for the mincemeat or the plum pudding. I found these cute little characters and the cricket and the dragonfly. They're all part of a black and white graphic on the free blog. And so if you did a search under like black and white images or something, it would probably show up in there. And so here we have, he sprang to his sleigh and gave his team the whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle into the night. And this is just, again, paper scraps, my stamp of the geese to give it that feeling of movement. And my final page here is Santa Claus, or St. Nicholas, really, goes off through the forest into the night, leaving goodies even for the animals, and bringing good cheer and generosity, and the reminder that it's always better to give than to receive, to children and people worldwide. So I hope you enjoyed that little story of St. Nicholas and the origins of the Santa Claus character, along with some of that other Christmas lore. Again, I can't stress enough how the graphics vary between the premium website with the bundles and the printables and the bundles and images you can get, as well as the free blog, where you can search for harder to find items, whether it's ephemera or people or postcards or whatever. I just can't stress enough how valuable the graphics fairy is to any journal maker or crafter in general. So I hope you take another look at various kits and just have a wonderful holiday season crafting and making things to tell your own stories of holidays and traditions. So happy holidays. I'll see you another time. Bye bye.